3 rings for the Elven kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. In the second age of Middle-earth, the Dark Lord Sauron, seeking to corrupt and dominate all life, devised a plan to bring all the free peoples under his control. He assumed a fair form, calling himself Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and approached the High King of the Noldor Elves, Gil-galad, and the Elf Lord Elrond in the Elven kingdom of Lindon, claiming to be an emissary of the Valar. Gil-galad, however, perceived that Annatar was not what he seemed, and sent him away, warning all elves not to trust this stranger. Despite this warning, Annatar managed to deceive the elves of the kingdom of Eregion. The Gwaith y Myrdain, meaning people of the jewel smiths, were a brotherhood of smiths and craftsmen in Eregion. Their greatest member was Lord Celebrimbor, the grandson of the former king of the Noldor Feanor, who had crafted the Silmarils in the First Age. Though the Gwaith y Myrdain loved Middle-earth, they longed for the beauty and bliss of their former home, Valinor. Sauron, disguised as Annatar, used this longing to deceive them, convincing them that with his knowledge they could slow the decay of the world and make Middle-earth as beautiful as Valinor. The smiths befriended him and began to work with him. Annatar taught the smiths how to create rings that would bestow powers on their wearers. The smiths first forged many lesser rings to practice and hone their skills, which were described as essays in the craft. By the year 1500 of the Second Age, having perfected their craft, they created 16 greater rings. After the creation of these greater rings, Annatar departed Eregion. Celebrimbor, using the knowledge he had gained, crafted 3 rings of his own without Annatar's direct involvement, completing them around the year 1590 of the Second Age. Sauron then returned to his domain in Mordor, shedding his Annatar persona, and entered the heart of Mount Doom, where he forged his own ring, the One Ring, into which he poured a significant portion of his own power. The 3 rings of power forged by Celebrimbor after Annatar's departure were the most powerful of the greater rings, with the exception of Sauron's Master Ring. They were granted the ability to preserve beauty by halting change, warding off decay, and postponing the weariness of the world. Each ring had unique properties. Celebrimbor named them Nenya, Narya, and Vilya, after the elements of water, fire, and air. Nenya, also known as the Ring of Adamant or the Ring of Water, was made of mithril and set with a white stone of adamant. Its powers included preservation, protection, and concealment from evil. Narya, known as the Ring of Fire or the Red Ring, was set with a ruby, red as fire, and was said to have the power to inspire others and resist tyranny. Vilya, the Ring of Sapphire or the Ring of Air, was the mightiest of the 3, a gold band set with a great blue sapphire. Vilya had the power to heal and was speculated to have influence over certain elements as well. When Sauron put the One Ring on his finger, the elves who possessed the other great rings became aware of his deception and removed their rings, hiding them. Celebrimbor sent the 3 rings away for safekeeping. Narya and Vilya went to Gil-galad and Lindon, while Nenya was given to the Lady Galadriel in Lothlorien. Gil-galad entrusted Narya to his lieutenant Círdan, who later gave it to the wizard Gandalf in the Third Age. Vilya was primarily worn by Gil-galad until Elrond inherited it after Gil-galad's death at the end of the Second Age. Nenya was worn only by the Lady Galadriel. Unlike the other rings, the 3 did not render their wearer invisible, but were themselves invisible. And because the 3 were made without Sauron's direct involvement, they were considered unsullied. After sending away Nenya, Narya, and Vilya, Celebrimbor also sent a ring to Durin III, king of the dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm. Sauron, furious with the elves for withholding the remaining rings, attacked Eregion, laying waste to the kingdom and capturing Celebrimbor. Under torture, Celebrimbor revealed the locations of all but the 3 greatest rings before his death. Sauron recovered the remaining 15 rings and gave 6 more to other dwarf lords, possibly from clans such as the Firebeards, Broadbeams, Iron Fists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, and the Stonefoots. King Durin, as the leader of Durin's folk, already possessed the rings sent by the elves, making a total of 7. However, Sauron found that he could not bend the dwarves to his will, as they were resistant to some of the Seven's more detrimental effects. The rings did not render them invisible. Instead, it is believed that the dwarves' natural hardiness, combined with the fact that the bearers were the greatest of their race, allowed them to resist Sauron's control. It is also speculated that the rings granted their wearers an increased lifespan. Despite this, however, the dwarves were not impervious to the rings' malignant powers. The rings granted immense wealth and riches, but also amplified their wearers' greed and covetousness, ultimately leading to their ruin. The wearers of the dwarven rings began hoarding vast amounts of wealth. This greed attracted dragons, with the most famous example being King Thror of Erebor. Thror's love of treasure summoned the dragon Smaug, leading to the destruction of the town of Dale and the loss of his kingdom. By the time of the War of the Ring, it is stated that 4 of the 7 had been consumed by dragonfire, and the remaining 3 had been reclaimed by Sauron. The ring given to Durin III was passed from father to son until it was taken from Thrain II, who was captured and tormented by Sauron. The last we hear of the 7 is before the War of the Ring, when an envoy of Sauron offers the remaining 3 rings to Dane Ironfoot for assistance in locating his one ring. Dane, recognizing Sauron's treachery, refuses. Sauron distributed the remaining 9 rings among the race of men. It is said that 3 were given to the men of Númenor, and at least 1 to the men of the East. The bearers of these 9 rings were utterly corrupted, amassing glory and riches, and becoming powerful sorcerers, kings, and influential figures among men. The rings extended their lives unnaturally and granted the power to turn invisible, effectively preventing aging and seeming to make them immortal. Over time, however, life became unbearable to them. When they wore their rings, they experienced phantoms and delusions from Sauron. One by one, they fell under Sauron's complete control and became permanently invisible, turning into wraiths who obeyed only his commands. Their lives and powers were linked to Sauron, making them extensions of his will. Only 2 of the Nazgûl are named, the Witch King of Angmar and Khamûl the Easterling. When Sauron's power waned, the wraiths were relatively powerless. However, as Sauron grew stronger, they also became much more powerful, with the Witch King presumably able to match Gandalf the White in strength. The Nazgûl, or Ringwraiths, became his greatest servants. It is unclear whether the Nazgûl kept their 9 rings after their transformation, or if Sauron took them back. The One Ring, secretly forged by Sauron in the heart of Mount Doom, had the power to dominate the other 19 Great Rings. Sauron's intent was to command the minds of the other ring-bearers through their rings of power. His original plan was to give the rings to powerful and influential elves. Through the One Ring, Sauron intended to control the thoughts of these ring-bearers, achieving dominance over the elves without the need for military action. To ensure this, the One Ring had to be significantly stronger than the other rings. Sauron invested a great deal of his own power into the ring, making it far stronger and granting it unique powers. Though his plan did not succeed perfectly, the existence of the One Ring meant that the other rings, with which many kingdoms had been built, could not be used safely. Additionally, Sauron's personal power was greatly enhanced as long as he wore the ring, giving him military might beyond what he could otherwise achieve. Unlike the other Great Rings, the One Ring had no gem and appeared as a simple golden band. However, heating the ring in a fire revealed the incantation Sauron had placed upon it. One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Sauron would go on to battle High King Gil-galad and Elendil, the king of Gondor and Arnor, at the end of the War of the Last Alliance. Sauron was defeated by the kings at the cost of their lives. Elendil's son, Isildur, managed to cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. According to Isildur, Sauron's hand was black and yet burned like fire. He also noted that the script on the ring was visible while Sauron wore it. The ring was virtually indestructible, and no craft or power possessed by the elves or Gandalf could harm it. It appeared to have a will of its own, or at least the ability to independently carry out Sauron's will, since it contained a large portion of his being. Additionally, the ring could expand or shrink by itself to fit different races. Instead of destroying the One Ring, Isildur was corrupted by it and kept it for himself. The ring later betrayed Isildur, leading to his death. After Isildur's death, the ring was lost for 2,500 years until it was found by the Stour hobbit Deagle while fishing in the Gladden River. When Deagle's cousin Smeagol saw the ring, he asked to have it as a birthday present. When Deagle refused, Smeagol strangled him to death and took the ring for himself. The ring twisted Smeagol's body and mind, turning him into the creature Gollum and prolonging his life. He was subsequently banished by his people. Gollum found a new home in a cave in the Misty Mountains where he lived with the ring for over 400 years. In 2941 of the Third Age, the hobbit Bilbo Baggins found the ring in Gollum's cave and took it for himself. Bilbo later passed the ring to his cousin Frodo Baggins, who would go on to destroy it. After the destruction of the One Ring, the power of the other rings faded away. Narya, Nenya, and Vilya were taken by Gandalf, Galadriel, and Elrond, respectively, into the West when they departed Middle-earth at the end of the Third Age.